I was like 16, 17. My dad used to tell me, if you want to get money for your school the next session, you need to go and make something and go and sell it yourself. My dad's always wanted me to have that experience, that experience of life. You have to go there, hustle, and get it done. So that was when I started thinking positively, started reading motivational books. Life is not your beginning, it's how you take it. All my childhood life, I've hustled. And then I came to the UK. I was in this company, I was enjoying it. And then in 2015, when the oil and gas market crashed, I was more or less the target. So that redundancy affected me a lot. I cried all the way home that day they told me. And then I started looking for other things to do. That was how I got into property, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fast forward to now, because you have clarinet properties. How many properties have you over the years invested in?
Since 2016, we sort of traded over 25 properties. Yeah.
Wow. Where do you find these properties, and how do you know that these properties have the potential to be what you think they could be?
So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of things.
Hey everybody, on the show today we are joined by Andrew Arere, a Nigerian-born engineering consultant and real estate entrepreneur whose journey spans oil rigs, boardrooms and a bold reinvention. In this episode, Andrew shares how he went from selling handmade arts at the age of 16 on the streets to managing global telecom projects. He shared about the moment he was made redundant in the UK and why, in a sense, it was the best thing that happened to him. He shared how to separate who you are from who the world tells you to be, and shared about a mindset shift that turned failure into a stepping stone. He shared how to build real wealth without losing your identity, values, or peace. So whether you're an immigrant navigating career crossroads or you're just an aspiring entrepreneur figuring out where to start, Andrew's story is full of practical wisdom and deep perspective. I'll see you there.
One of the first questions that we tend to ask our guests these days is to introduce themselves. So I know I've done some research about you, but there's sometimes almost nothing like hearing the guests talk about themselves in their own words. So if I was to ask you, who is Andrew and what makes him tick, what would you say?
So I'm Andrew Arere. I'm a property investor, entrepreneur, and an engineering consultant. Originally from Nigeria, moved into the UK about 16 years ago, and I've got a real estate business which is growing gradually. So I've always seen myself as someone that's always looking to improve and have a very flair for mindset. Believing that the way you think define who you are.
Let's expand on that. The way you think defines who you are. When was your earliest experience dealing with understanding the power of mindset and how that's important, and how have you approached your mindset development?
Yeah, so when I was in in the university, that was back in Nigeria. I graduated from Delta State University. Delta State is in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. So there was a period where there were a lot of challenges, and I just felt that I was not going in the right path, So I make a twist and make sure that my mindset. I realized that my mindset was actually what was affecting me because of my background, So
What's your background here?
Yeah, so I was born out of marriage, so I didn't have the fantastic background, moved from families to families, while growing up, even as a child. My dad was very key in my life, but he was also a young man at the time as well. So he also trying to find his faith, studying and all of that. So I had to live with his brothers, sisters, So from the age of as young as 4 years old, I was moved from one parent to the other, one family to the other, one family to the other. I lived in Lagos for a while, lived in Delta State for a while. So I was all over the place until I was 12, when my dad settled down, But I realized that as a young child then, I didn't really have that bond. My mom wasn't there as well. I didn't meet my mom until I was 18, so she wasn't in my life as well. So I realized I didn't have that bond, family bond. So as a child, those kind of situations, that love that you want from a child, from a parent, I didn't have it, So that sort of affected my mindset, and I was looking to belong somewhere, but it was taking me in the wrong path, So, and then I changed my direction, and I told myself that if I don't want this to happen, if I don't want to have these for my kids, I need to change myself, So that was when I started thinking positively, started reading motivational books and things like that, And over the years, I met a very great mentor after my youth service, Dayo Lawi. He was the chairman of Dunlop at the time in Nigeria. So he became my first mentor. So he channeled my mind, So he actually made me realize that, life is not your beginning, it's how you take it. It's what you think that will happen to you. So always make sure that you always thinking positively to sort of achieve what you want,
Right.
So it starts from within yourself, and then that resonate out of you to achieve whatever you want, So that was the beginning for me, So he gave me a lot of books and things like that, So from that teenage, from maybe 19, 20 years, I've sort of have that as a very strong value for myself, that, whatever you think is what you can become, So, and that's helped me throughout my life, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your life was heading in a certain direction that you didn't want. What direction was your life heading to?
Yeah, so you know how it is in Nigeria, peer groups, university, different peer groups, without going into too much details, it was quite difficult, So not the right kind of peer groups at the time, So I knew that wasn't the path for me, so I had to change.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And what books would you say you were feeding on back then that started to make you reposition yourself?
Yeah, so the one of the key book is The Power of Positive Thinking. So those different books, knowing your value, I'll say the Slight Edge as well, So those are the books that helped me, and I also followed a lot about Joyce Meyer. I don't know if you've heard of her. A lot of positive books. Even Joel Osteen's as well, So I started channeling myself in those directions, And I was a very strong member of Daystar.
Right. Pastor Sam
Sam
Adeyemi.
Adeyemi,
Yeah, he's very into positive
So
thinking
I
and
was,
stuff like that.
So those are the kind of people and that I started surrounding myself with, to try and keep pushing myself, through those years. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned meeting Olawi. What's
Dayo Lawi.
Dayala, who was the chairman of Dunlop at the time, and he became your mentor. How did that meeting happen? How did you meet him, and how did he become your mentor?
Yeah, so Dayo Lawi was a mentor for Guaranteed Trust Bank Entrepreneurial Program. So when I graduated from uni, I did my youth service in the North. My first training in the North didn't really stay that much. That was during that period when there was, during that time of 9/11, there was a lot of hostility in the North, so I relocated my service down to Lagos. And because I wanted to be an entrepreneur right from time, so I enrolled for the Guaranteed Trust Bank Foundation. You know, they call it an entrepreneur. I don't know whether that is actually still on at the moment, actually. So it was an entrepreneurial training program where at the end of the day, at the end of 6-month program, they'll teach you everything you need to know about business, being an entrepreneur, marketing, and things like that. Then you have to set up as your own model, your own business plan, and then you sell that your business plan to investors, you know, and then there is a competition at the end of that program, and then they pick the best entrepreneur, you know, and then they invest, GTB invest on that particular program, you know. So they actually sponsored a couple of businesses, GTB at the time. So Dayo Lawi was a mentor that was assigned to me as part of that program.
I see.
You know, so that was how I met him, you know. So, and then I was, because he was in the industry, sort of business, Dunlop manufacturing, and the business plan I was putting forward at the time was more relating to roofing, you know, which is basically from what some of the business ideas that my parents sort of had, you know. So he mentored me. I presented my business plan, but I actually came third, so I didn't get an investment.
I
you know?
see.
So, yeah, but since then, he was very influential in my life because I saw him and I said, this is the kind of person I want to be, you know. And even during that period, because of my willingness and my you know, desire to make it really, after the program, he still continued to mentor me, you know. Allowed me to come into his home, you know, once every month, to meet his family, you know. So I see the difference, you know, between the life I want to be and the life, you know, I was at the time, you know. So he was the role model for me, you know, so which was very influential.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned then, before meeting Dayo, you of course wanted to be an entrepreneur. Where did the desire come from?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my dad is an artist, you know, he's a sculptor. So, and my family is a family of artists, you know. They do a lot of designs, you know, creativity. So that entrepreneurial sort of life has been within my family, you know. My dad and my uncle, they set up a business. When I was like 18, 19, I was part of that business as well, you know. So we used to design a lot of things, you know, flower pots, you know, a lot of creative things which are more related to creating art, you know. And that was actually the key drive for me because I grew up in that environment where we're always creating something, you know, we're always creating something to market, we're always creating something to sell. You know, I tell you, so when I was a child, I was like 16, 17, you know, my dad used to tell me, you know, if you want to get money for your school the next session, you need to go and make something and go and sell it yourself, you know. And I used to do that, you know. So my dad has already created designs,
see.
you know. So I would replicate them, and then I would take them, and then I would walk from different offices within Apapa in Lagos, and I would knock on offices, and then I'll sell those artworks.
Did you sell them?
Yeah, sell them. And
That's
then
amazing.
and that's sort of allowed me to get more money for my school the next session, you know. So it's always been part of me, really. You know, it's always been part of me.
So your family was, in a sense, like your first
Yes,
entrepreneurial, let's say, class.
Yes, yeah.
But then the GTB was a different sort of...
Yes, yeah. So the GTB was just to sort of put a bit of structure to sort of understand how the business world works, you know, how the entrepreneurial world works, you know. And I met a couple of good entrepreneurs at the time, you know. But the thing about it was, you know, you always have the challenge because I'm not from a wealthy family, you know, so you always have a challenge of, okay, the capital for you to do something, you know, the capital to do what you want to do, you know. So that has always been the challenge at the time.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really make a lot of progress, you know, until um, I decided that, okay, let me take the career path, you know, and see whether that can make me find my own way, you know, and that
Okay.
was what
You
I
did
did.
eventually.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll talk a bit about like your career and how that went shortly. But I'm still quite keen to understand your relationship with Dayo and some of the lessons you picked up
Okay.
from GTB. You mentioned that he took an interest in you. He saw you were very enterprising and
Yeah.
you had that desire. What were some of your traits or attributes or things you were doing then that made Dayo think, this particular guy of everybody else, this is one guy I'd want to sort of mentor and even continue the relationship outside the GTB course itself?
Yeah, I think basically it's because of my own personality, my own values, you know. I've always been a very humble person, you know, and I've always looked to push myself, you know. Always remain looking positive, always try to remain positive even in the most challenging situations, you know. So I think he saw that in me, you know, and he saw that desire, you know. And also has that same kind of story. I got to
I
know him as well,
see.
you know. So I sort of know that, oh, this person has also done it, you know, so I can do it, you know. So he saw a lot of um, I would say some similarity, you know, and it took interest in me, you know, and that was very valuable for me at that time of my life, you know. So and then to today, I'm still in touch with him. You know,
Wow.
so
Well,
yeah.
what are some of the things he taught you and that you learned in the GTB cohort course thing that you had not picked up from your family entrepreneurial class?
Yeah, so things about marketing, you know, because those are all part of the programs, you know. It's actually a proper MBA program.
How long was,
Put in six
how long?
months.
6 months.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yes. I'm not sure. I think I don't think they're still doing it anymore. I'm not sure, you know, but it was a proper MBA program. You know, they teach you everything, you know, marketing, how to do business plans, you know, how to do profit and loss, you know. So those are the technical part of it that I just had a desire to go and make something and go and sell it, you
I
know.
see.
So how do you reproduce what you want to make in the mass quantity to sell it to make more money, you know? So those are some of the things that we were taught at the time, you
Okay.
know.
Okay. And something else I'm quite keen to like learn about in your story was you mentioned around 16, 17, your dad had told you if you want to get your school for the next time, for next year, sales things, and you were going to the offices and stuff. Where did that confidence come from, and how did you deal with failure then? Because I'm pretty sure you'd have had a few people
Yeah, yeah,
say,
certainly, certainly. You know how it is in
yeah,
Lagos. You see a young 16 years old boy, you know, take a piece of artwork, you know, walk in a papa, knock the doors, you know. But the thing is, the truth about it is that you, although I see, I knocked a lot of doors, but there were rejections, you know, but there are still people that will accept you. They look at you and say, this young guy, you know, they see the courage and they even want to help you. And they bought things from me. So at the end of the day, when I go out and I sometimes it takes me 2 days, you know, but I sell the piece of work, you know, that will definitely help me for my education the next section, next semester, you know. So that's kept me going, you know, and I just keep doing it, you know. So I was doing it, you know. So people, you get rejection, of course, you know, and I have also I learned that rejection very early in life, you know. So that was a good experience, doing all of that. That was a good experience because even to today in business, you still get rejections,
Exactly.
But the fact that if you knock on 10 doors and one will open, that is positive, So that will always
So
keep you
you,
going.
so you basically see the glass as half full instead of
Yeah,
half
yeah,
empty. You're
yeah,
always
yeah.
looking for the positive
Yes,
spin in
yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah. You always see that, So which is quite interesting.
That's amazing that you're learning all these lessons at
Yeah,
such a young age. But I still want to drill into this idea of confidence and dealing with rejection. Because I know that's something perhaps several entrepreneurs might struggle with in terms of you're trying to do something, it doesn't work first time, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So someone says no. So you're 16 years old. So let's maybe paint a picture. You're 16, you go to an office, you knock on the door, and you show them the artwork.
yeah.
Hello, how does that go? But like, walk me through the interaction of a
Yeah,
field and what goes on in your head.
so of course, I've got a good product,
Yeah.
which is the artwork, and I know the kind of offices that would require it. So I'm not knocking on the mama put shop,
I see.
So I'm going to those offices that I know that they need this kind of artwork, So that's the first thing. I identify those offices, as a walk around. you know. So you go there, you go to the reception, you say, look, I've got this artwork to sell. Can I speak to your boss? Would they be interested in buying this art piece? Some people turn you away, Others look at you and said, okay, come and speak to him. And then I go and then I present it to them that, look, I've got this artwork. We make them in we can mass produce them. Would you like to have any of these for your office, or for your home, And some engaged in a very positive conversation, So, yeah, why are you not in school, People ask you those questions, but I tell them, yeah, I'm in school. This is part of what I used to pay my
I
fees for
see.
the next semester as well, And and they buy from you.
I
They
see.
buy from you. They price it. You know how
Yeah.
the rago in Nigeria, So they will price you. Sometimes the price is too low. I know that because my dad has given me minimum price, So I try to beat that to make sure that I make extra money for that as well,
Wow.
But these things, it wasn't that my parents uh, forced me to do them, but I did them out of necessity. I did them out of necessity because I know that because my dad's always want me to have that experience, that experience of life. You have to go there, hustle, and get it done,
Facts.
So he built that
Yeah.
in me, and there are some times as a young child, even when I was 13, I get resistance, I resist him in some of them when I was 13. I tell you another story.
Yeah.
When I was 13, I think I was about 12 or 13 at the time, and we had a farm, so because my dad has always been an entrepreneurial person. So because of his values, he sort of put a lot of that in me. So we had a farm, and we made sort of chickens and things like that, And he said, okay, so these chickens, you need to go and sell them, And some of this produce from this farm, some chicken, tomatoes, you need to go to the shops and have them distributed and sell them. And I said, no, I can't do that. I do that very, very early days. I said, no, I can't do that. But I said, no, you have to do it. Go and just go out and get it done. So I take them, go to the shops, and people buy them from you. So that gives you satisfaction that you've gone
I
out,
see.
And you achieved it.
I see.
So
I
that gives you
see.
satisfaction to get going, and that is actually, I would say, one of the basis of marketing. If you cannot go out of your way to speak to people
Yeah.
to get business, then you won't succeed as an entrepreneur.
Wow.
You know, so
So that
and
fear of failure and fear of rejections has to
yeah,
stop at
that's
some
yeah,
point. You have to
yeah, yeah.
overcome that.
You know, you have to accept that. You know, you have to accept that. You know,
Okay.
and that if you ask every business person, you need to know that before you get to success, you have to fail.
Yeah.
You know,
Facts.
or
Okay.
you have to have rejections. You
Okay.
know, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
So what I think I want to drill again then was you said the products, speaking about your dad's artwork when you went to the office, you said you knew that the products were good products.
Yeah.
Where did you get that assurance from? That this.
Yeah, because they sell them. You know,
Okay.
my apart from me taking them to sell, my dad also had like a gallery.
Ah, right.
You know, so
Okay.
people come in and buy
Oh, I
them
see.
as well. You know,
Okay.
so we sell them.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And we sell them a lot. You know,
Right,
so,
okay.
yeah.
So fast forward to the GTB cohort, you finish that, you then get into the 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 work.
Yes, yes, yeah.
How was that experience transitioning from that, lifestyle hustling and entrepreneurship
Yeah.
to an office desk?
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't feel it that much because I moved into my career also as part of hustling. Because the guy that came from the UK, the Cisco expert that came from the UK to set up his company, I was his first engineer, you know. So, and I was in his car. His car was our first office, you know. So it was it was like a continuation of the hustle,
I see.
you know. So myself and himself would get in the car, visit different banks, you know, and then we were doing networking at the time, you know, for a lot of different banks. This guy was really a very good Cisco engineer. He was a CCIE even at
At
that
that time,
time,
oh.
you know. So, so I knew again, okay, this is another person that, because I studied physics, you know, in the university, and I had taken interest in telecommunications, you know, GSM, networking, telecommunication, right when I was in the uni. So again, so that was another path that I said, okay, I want to take, you know, because then GSM was just coming into Nigeria
Right.
as well, you know. So and even prior to that, before this happened, when I was in the north, because if you remember, I don't know if you remember, when GSM started, they used to have franchises all over the country that sells SIM cards, that sell phones, you know, so you can sort of buddy up with MTN. So you have an
Right.
MTN franchise
Right.
all over the country, you
Right.
know. So when I was doing my youth service, I actually thought that, okay, I'm going to have a franchise in Yobe State where I was, you know. So I started all the process, met a local business guy. We set up a shop, you know, just to have that franchise. So I brought the franchise to Yobe State, you know, for this guy who has a computer shop. And you know how it was then. Computers were not what we have now. You know, it was like people go to cyber cafes, you know, to go and browse. And so this guy had a cyber cafe in Yobe State, Potiskum. Yeah, Potiskum. And so I approached him, and then we got a franchise for him to start selling MTN SIM card, MTN airtime, you know, and all of that. You know, so that was before. So that was sort of my taste with technology, you know, with telecoms, because I have already studied, did a lot of my dissertation and all of that in GSM before.
I see.
So I wanted to do that. And so when I left Yobe and I couldn't really progress that, and I met this chap, this chap that came from the UK. I just had that passion. Oh, okay, yes, I can. He can teach me more about networking. I can grow through him, you know. And that was what I did. His office was in his car. We drive all around different banks, and we we were basically just reconfiguring a lot of their networks, you know, and that was how it is, you know. So to answer your question, that sort of that transition was also more like a hustle,
I see.
you know. So
Okay.
I didn't see it as, it wasn't like you coming from hustle to a white collar
I see.
job, sitting in the
You
office.
still sort of
Yeah,
hustling
yeah,
into
yeah.
that.
So it was the same. It was the same. It was the same thing, really, you know. And then from there, from there, we started having a lot of projects, you know. So he rented an office. He started employing other engineers with myself. So I was the first senior engineer. So we started growing, you know. So his business started growing, you know. So we became, I think, about 5 engineers with myself and himself. And that was how we started getting jobs in oil and gas, you know, with a company in Port Harcourt, you know. So it was on one of those projects, you know, that, you know, we are based in Lagos. The project was in Bonny
Yeah.
Terminal, you know, in Niger Delta. And some of the other engineers, you know, they didn't want to go to Bonny Terminal. They didn't want to go to Niger Delta because they felt, you know, there was hostility there, you know. So because I was from
From
Niger
there.
Delta, so I said, okay, I will go, you know. So I put myself forward. I said, okay, I'll go, you know. So, and that was how I got into oil and gas, you know.
Wow.
Through that.
Your life has been hustling, connecting you
Yeah,
to
yeah,
different things.
yeah, yeah.
When did UK get into the picture?
So when I started working with Stanton Alliance, which is the company that this guy owns, um, he came from the UK. So he sort of, his family were here. So I knew him when I was a child because he
Yeah.
used to live on my street. You know, some of his brothers were already in the UK, and all. So I already knew him when I was a child. And so that was when, while I was working there, that was when he opened up that opportunity for me. He said, look, there are other ways that you can grow. You know, you can go have different courses in the UK. So he sort of opened that path for me to go and attend courses, you know. So while I was working with him, I was looking to attend a course in the UK here. You know, it's sort of a telecom GSM course, you know, in the UK. And that was sort of the time I started thinking of going abroad, you know, because because of my background, that never came to me because I didn't have that opportunity.
I see.
You know, so that sort of thought never came to me. So it was when I was working with him, those thoughts started coming to me. Oh, maybe I can start looking to do something abroad, you know. But being the kind of person I am, I didn't just want to go without knowing what I want to do, you know. So I said, okay, I'll take the route of trying to get different courses, you know. So one of my other colleague got an admission, and he did it through the same company. The companies sort of sponsored him. He did a course. So when I went to the Niger Delta to start doing those projects, so it turned out that the oil and gas project, I became the lead, you know. So because I'm from there, so we started getting more projects through that company, through that oil
I
and gas
see.
company.
Okay.
So I was no longer based in Lagos anymore. I moved to Port Harcourt, you know, and was the focal point for all the oil and gas projects for the company, you know. So that was, and then after a while, I think about a year or two, you know, another company within oil and gas approached me and said, oh, would you like to come and work for us? So this was a Singaporean company. You know, would you like to come and work for us as our engineer? We need engineers to manage all these projects because they had a lot of telecom engineering projects, infrastructure projects for Shell at the time, you know. So that was how I left the other company.
I see.
And then joined this company, which is Singapore based. So that company, Transtel, sort of opened a lot of horizon for me, you know. So give me, the offices was in Port Harcourt. Again, I was their first engineer. I think the second engineer, not the first. But it opened a lot more opportunity for me because the company, I became a commissioning engineer.
What does that mean?
So commissioning engineer is that, you know, they deliver a system and then you just go and make the system work.
Okay.
You know, you on site, you go to site, you integrate the system, and then you make them work, you know. So I became the commissioning engineer for the Niger Delta projects, you know. So I worked for about a year or two with them. And then, again, not a corporate environment, you know, still field environment,
Okay.
you know. I was because I'm all a hustler, you know, so that field environment sort of suits me very well, you know. So still in that field environment. But this company recognized our potential, you know, and they started sending us abroad, all over the world, really, to different projects. So they have projects in almost a lot of all the oil and gas producing countries, you know. So they would just deploy us from Nigeria. So that was how I started traveling abroad.
I see.
You know, as a commissioning engineer. So yeah, so that was how I really got deep into oil and gas. Did a lot of traveling. Honestly, there's no country I haven't been to, oil and gas country I haven't been to.
Wow.
You know, Angola, Sudan, Iran, Dubai, everywhere, you know. So that company, Korea, you know, that company took us there, you know. So after I worked there for doing this same role, you know, this role, commissioning role I was doing, I was hardly in my home. I say in a whole year, I can always be in my home for 1 month, you know, because the whole year I'm traveling.
Okay.
I just come back, another deployment, come back, another deployment, come back, another deployment. So it got to a point, I started thinking I need to settle down, you know, and I realized while doing the project that the opportunities that I was now aspiring to become a design engineer was not actually in Nigeria at the time. You know, all the design, all the engineering, all the build for those systems, those equipment were all done abroad.
Right.
You know, so I started aspiring that I cannot do commissioning, traveling all about all my life, you know, I need to move to the next level, you know. So that was really when I started pushing to see if I can go abroad,
Okay.
you know. But by this time, I already been to the UK 2-3 times doing different courses in the UK. And then I put that filler to my company, you know, at the time that, look, I need to be in engineering. I don't want to be a field engineer anymore. I want to be in the office, do the design, you know, and all of that, you know. So they told me, okay, you come to Singapore and work with us in Singapore.
Okay.
You know?
I'm sorry, was that just because the thinking in your mind about moving to be like a design engineer and being in the office, was that primarily because it was more stable? Is it more like stabilized, or it was more lucrative?
Yeah, because it was then I was already getting married. I was planning to get married. I was planning to settle down. So being a field engineer, you're all over the place, you know.
I see.
So it wasn't a situation for
It wasn't exactly marriage friendly.
yeah, exactly. So I wanted to have that transition.
Right.
You
Okay.
know? And of course, you actually get more experience in doing the design. You know, I've done, it's just like when as part of your career, you do something for a while. At initially it's enthusiastic, you know, then you see that I know everything I need to know in this area. I need to move. I need another challenge. I need
see.
another
Okay.
challenge, you know.
Okay.
So that was what it was for me. So I wanted that extra challenge, you
Okay.
know. So that was what happened. And
Right.
then I moved to Singapore.
Okay.
So they asked me, okay, would you come to Singapore? I said, okay, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'll live in Singapore. So I stayed in Singapore for about 6 months, but I didn't really enjoy it.
Why is that?
Yeah, because the environment, suddenly I'm so far from home. You know, so suddenly I'm so far from home, you know. Suddenly I'm struggling to even get our food to eat and all of that, you know. So I didn't really enjoy it, you know. And then in the company were supportive, gave me accommodation, everything, you know, while I was in Singapore. Tried to make me comfortable, but I didn't really enjoy it, you know. And then I was also planning to get married then as well. So I went back, got married, you know, and then I said, okay, I'll go back to Singapore, stay a little bit, see where I am with it, and then make a decision on what I want to do, really. So while I was in Singapore, I got a feeler about a job in the UK, you know. The company in the UK, company in Aberdeen, were looking for engineers, you know, in my area. And I applied for it, okay. So while I was in Singapore, the hiring manager in Aberdeen phoned me up and said, oh, we got your CV. Do you want to come and have an interview? So I said, I'm in Singapore at the moment. I said, oh, that's good, that's good. On your way to Nigeria, can you just stop by in Aberdeen? I said, oh, sorry, it's not quite like that. I've got a Nigerian passport. I need to get a visa, you know, before I can come back to the UK. You know, um, so that was what I did. I now went back to Nigeria,
Right.
got a visa, a visiting visa, and then I traveled to Aberdeen for the interview.
Right.
You know, so that was actually the first time I really came into the UK with the prospect of working.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I did my interview in Aberdeen. Believe it or not, the very day I was doing my interview in Aberdeen, cold. There was snow everywhere, you know. And the manager looked at me and said, looked outside. I was looking outside, you know. I said, oh, that was the first time I saw snow. You know, I said, are you sure you want to come to this cold? You know. Yeah, I said, yeah, that's I want to do it, you know. So I signed the contract with them, and they told me during that period, during the interview, that my recruiting me from Nigeria was exceptional for them. You know, they had not done it before. You know, so it was exceptional for them. Even to the top manager at the company at the time, they all came to speak to me, you know, during the interview, just to really understand, you know, to make sure that, you know, my skills and everything, you know. And they told me that it was an exceptional recruitment, really, that they hadn't done that before. So that was it. I got my contract, signed it, and they were to process my visa, you know. So I went back to Nigeria, signed my contract, and then I gave my notice to the former company. So sorry, I can't come back to Singapore because I didn't really enjoy it. But I think UK is the best place for me. I want to go to the UK. So I resigned from the other company, and the visas got stuck. They couldn't get me a visa because the immigration system was just that very month, the immigration rule changed. You know, the immigration rule changed,
My
and I
goodness.
couldn't get a visa.
Oh my days.
You know, they couldn't get me a visa, and then I was back in Lagos without a job now.
Because you had resigned from
because I've
Singapore.
resigned from the former company, and I can't really start with the new company because I have to be in the UK to
Yeah.
start. And they cannot get me a visa. So I got stuck. And they tried that for about 6 months. They got the first rejection, they got the second rejection, and then it was almost getting to the point where they were going to let me go. So then, and then I got information from somebody else that, why don't you try your high skilled route? Because you are very qualified to do high skill. You've traveled all over the place. You have a lot of experience, so you can do that, So that was how I started the visa process myself,
I see.
But for that process to go through, I needed 6 months, 6 extra months. So during that time, what do I do? So I got another job in Port Harcourt. And I was also doing some part-time job for this other company as well in Aberdeen. So they were feeding me with some job. They didn't just say, okay, that's it, just go. No, they were very, very good to me. And that was how I waited, until I got my skilled visa.
Right.
Which later turned to be a blessing, because I had my skilled visa. I'm not tied to the company,
Yeah.
So I had my freedom, So that
fantastic. I see.
that was it, So sometimes that's one of the things in life, when things happen, challenges happens to you, you don't really know where that is going. But as long as you remain positive, that whatever it is, you get the best outcome of it.
Wow.
Then everything turns out good for you, And that's how that's always the outlook of my life,
Right.
because I've had a lot of challenges, rejections, things like that, but because of my mindset, I don't dwell in them that much.
Right. Okay.
I always see that every door that closes, another one will definitely open.
Wow.
So that was how I eventually got my skilled visa, and then I moved to Aberdeen.
Okay.
So I moved to Aberdeen, and then I started to the UK.
Yeah.
So it was an exceptional circumstances, So I'm sort of different from a lot of people that came here through student routes and things like that, So I got a job, really, and then I moved here. The company paid accommodation for me for 6 months, so they sort of settled me well there, before I started finding my own fit.
Right. Okay. So at this point, something that I've been so picking from your story was you had no issues with getting a job. Like almost everywhere you turned to, even when you had that break in Nigeria, there was a job waiting. Why do you think that was the case for you? Like, was it that you had developed skill sets that companies were?
Yeah. So at that time, so because I was, first thing is because of my own attitude. Okay, I'm always looking to learn. Okay, and the very first company, the very first oil and gas company I was working for, the exposure they gave to me on the multiple trips, different projects that I was going to at the time, sort of opened a lot of experience for me. So it gave me a lot of skills.
I see.
So I wasn't. It was not like you are on one project and then that is it. No, I was doing multiple projects, traveling to different places. Met different people. Even they send me to some places where the system that they are commissioning, I've never seen it before, but I learn it, and make sure that I make it work, and so this kind of attitude, so I've always learned a lot, So I got a lot of skills very quickly within a very short period of time.
I see.
So
I suppose it's safe to say if someone has the right skill sets and right attitude, you would never there would be people always looking for you.
Yes,
really
exactly.
interesting.
Exactly.
But at this point, is it safe to say you are a big boy then, like compared to where you were coming from? At the point where you had moved to the UK, you had your own house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You were very comfortable.
Yes, I was comfortable.
Right.
So
Okay.
it was okay.
Right.
So, and in a way, I would say that these things happen because of my own decisions, because I also had the opportunity to decide to go through the student route, but I didn't really want to, so I made a decision that, you know what, I've got enough experience that I can work, so I didn't limit myself to not apply for jobs in the UK. I was applying for jobs. I was applying for jobs all over the world because I knew that I had the skill set.
Wow.
Even when I was in Nigeria. Then I had already made up my mind, I want to move abroad. But if I had to go abroad, I have to go and work.
I see.
I don't want to go and then, because then I've had a lot of different trips to the UK, so I see the challenges people have. So I made up my mind very early that I won't come here and go through those challenges because I feel that I've got enough skill to fit in.
I see.
So I had that belief. So that sort of gave me the confidence. And because of all the opportunities I've had, traveling all over, doing all these projects, doing all this commissioning, so I had that belief that it's the same skill set, I'm meeting, during all those trips, I meet different engineers from the UK, from the US, everywhere. So I know my skill already, so that was basically my decision.
Right, okay. So you settled in Aberdeen, and fast forward several years, you get a redundancy.
Yeah.
Walk me through that day when this conversation
So
happened.
you can imagine that suddenly, through all my childhood life, I've hustled, entrepreneurial, and then I came to the UK, everything was settled, I was comfortable, and I just felt that being so comfortable sort of affected me, so I never look anywhere else anymore. I came in, I was in this company, I was enjoying it. Again, I just made up my mind, okay, I'm going to grow in this company and try and move myself up the ladder. So I started doing that, I forgot about all my entrepreneurial, all my entrepreneurial goals, all of that were all, on the side now because I was too comfortable, And and I did well. I grew in the company, I became a project manager, moved from one division to the other within the company. So I grew, and I've always been my own type of person. I've always wanted to grow, I don't like to, I always tell myself I don't stay in a place for 3 years in a row. I always want to move on to the next place, learn the next thing. So I did that, I grew. And then 2015, when the oil and gas market crashed, I was more or less the target, because I was the manager, the only black person in a top role in the organization, really, so that redundancy affected me a lot, I felt that was more or less the lowest part of my life being in the UK, when I was made redundant. I cried all the way home. That day they told me, nothing for you.
Did you see it coming?
I didn't see it coming, because I knew the rules, so I wasn't even the rule they say the last to come is always the first to go, But I wasn't the last, so I knew that the redundancy was going on, so I knew I was a bit confident I wasn't going to be made redundant. But I was surprised I was made redundant at the time. But again, with my own kind of attitude, I didn't take, after that very first day of that low moment, and I tell you the other thing as well, I was made redundant just 2 weeks after I have paid for my ILR for my whole family. Yeah? Which was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
That was a lot of money, And here I am, skint, more or less skint. And then I was made redundant, So what am I going to do?
Where do you start from?
Where do I start from again, So when I got home, cried home, spoke to my wife, again, that was when my entrepreneurial spirit came back.
The hustling spirit was like, what?
Yeah. I told myself, you know what? I can do something else.
Wow.
I can do something else, So I've always, be resilient. I can do something else,
How did your wife react to the news?
Yeah, she definitely felt very bad with the fact that, we've just spent a lot of, you are in this country, yes, you are comfortable, but with all the expenses and everything, you can hardly save a lot, you know how it is, So it was tough, but I quickly switched my mindset, I said, okay, I'm going to not make it affect me. People were telling me, oh, you can sue the company, you can do this, they shouldn't do this to you, you are not supposed to be the first to go, I was getting advice from all over the place, but I told myself that there's no point trying to burn bridges that I've built over the years,
Wow.
So I again positively accepted it, took the redundancy, got the redundancy pay, and then I told them that, okay, do you have any other... So I sort of went back to the very first department that brought me to because at that time I've moved from that department and I moved to a different department within the organization. So I went back to the first department. I said, do you guys have any jobs for me that I can do, even if it's part-time, and all of that, So, and then knowing my skills, they said, okay, yeah, we can take you for a couple of months, but it has to be on contract basis, That was how I started contracting. So I didn't feel bad at all. I stayed in the same company, contracting, So I worked with them for a couple of months, and then I left, And since then, I've just started doing my own contracting work,
Right.
Really. I've never really went back to full-time employment since then, But that period was actually sort of brought back my entrepreneurial zeal, to try and, okay, I've tasted it, I've been in the UK, I've been comfortable, but what did that do to me, At the end of the day, I still didn't have that income, that can guarantee me, for life, So then I started thinking, I made the decision right there and there that I have to look for another income, and I will never rely on one income again.
At that point in time.
Yes,
I
yes,
see.
yes, yes. So that was when I made the decision. And then I started looking for other things to do. You know, like I said, tried stock market. I looked at it. It didn't work very well. And then one of these evenings, my wife told me that, oh, there's a property education seminar that is going to be taking place in Aberdeen for 2 hours, a 3 hours program, and it's Robert Kiyosaki.
Is that the same one, Neil?
Yes, the same one. You know, for some reason, because we are searching for things. You know, so you get a feed through your Gmail, you know, and then my wife got it, you know, and she forwarded it to me and said, "Oh, well, why don't we go and have a look and see what it is?" So we went, myself and herself, and we went to this training, 3 hours training. And being the entrepreneur that I am, I listened to the training, and I caught the business idea like that. And then I told my wife that, oh, this is it. As part of the training, they tell you to sign up for another 3 days training, you know, and then another, you know. And then my wife told me, oh, no, this is a scam, you know, this is a scam. I said, well, you brought it to me in the first place. You know, it's not a scam.
Yeah.
I understand it, you know.
What made you think you had gotten it?
Yeah, because I think it was, again, because I've always known business, you know, I've always had that entrepreneurial zeal.
I see.
You know, so when they're presenting it in a way that, okay, this is what you can do, and some of it sort of, I had applied that a little bit in my own home, you know, because when we bought our first home, we bought it very run down, and we started we're living in it, and we did it up.
I see.
The value appreciated. So I sort of have that. I understood that part, you know. But all the other things I didn't know was the business side of it, you know. And when they gave you the filler, but because I've always known business, I quickly got it.
I see.
This is it, you
Okay.
know. And bless my wife. She said, don't sign up for this. I said, no, don't worry. I'll sign up, you know. So I signed up for it.
For the next 3 days?
Yeah, for the next 3 days. And that was how I got into property, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions there, actually. So I think the first one was, had you had any money saved, so substantial money saved from that period to kickstart your real estate?
No, so
so
the only money I had then was the redundancy money.
I see.
You know, so because I've stayed in the company for many years, so I got a chunk
Of money to
redundancy
use for that, okay.
You know? So my very first flat, I bought with my own money.
Redundancy money, okay.
With that redundancy money.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So at this point where you got this news of redundancy and had this Kiyosaki event, what year was that?
So that was 2016.
Okay, 2016.
2016, yeah.
And what were some of the lessons you picked up from your training that equipped you to start, and how did you go about starting your own real estate?
Yeah,
journey?
so the business sort of is based on, you know, looking for rundown properties, you know, doing them up, and then they appreciate in value, you know. So you basically force the valuation of your own property, you know, of that property. And that is one of the reasons why I choose property instead of shares of investment, you know, because in shares, you know, Elon Musk can say something today about the company and the shares are down. You know, there are too many influences, you know. But I saw that with property, you can actually, you're in control of how you influence the appreciation of the property by adding that value. You
Okay.
know, so you can decide to add a new kitchen, a new bathroom, or leave it that way. So you are basically in control. Yes, there are a lot of market influences, but you are in control of basically growing that asset.
Okay.
So that's some of those, sort of key ideas within the business sort of resonate with me, and I said, okay, this is what I can do.
Okay. And fast forward to now, because you have Clarinet Properties, which is like your own company that you use. That. How many properties have you over the years invested in and transferred?
Yeah, so I was saying since 2016, we sort of traded over 25 properties. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. And what's that? Contrast that with your full-time employment now.
Yeah.
Where's your mind at in terms of the comparing and contrasting between you
So
being back in that hustling
yeah.
spirit?
So for me, because I've always loved that hustling spirit, love hustling. I sort of see that joy of creating something, of that entrepreneurial joy comes to me, whenever I do something, whenever I create a property, take it from scratch, turn it into a very beautiful home and have other people live in it, and then you see the income coming, But what I've still not sort of gotten away from is still the value that, I'm not going to rely on one income. So even though that I'm doing property, I still don't want to rely on property full time as a single income for me, So that was why I still held on to my contracting business, But the way I sort of do it now is that the growth in the property business have allowed me more flexibility with the contracting business. So I don't have to, if I decide that I don't want to do any contract for 6 months, I know that I have that income from another source that is supporting the family.
Right. Okay. So drilling into the technicalities of property market and things like that. So your strategy is finding rundown houses and then increasing the value. Where do you find these properties, and how do you know that these properties have the potential to be what you think they would be? Does that make sense?
Yes. So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of things that you have to do, knowing the area, knowing the demand, demand and supply, so you need to understand that within that area when you are qualifying your property. You need to know that there is a potential for the property to rent.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So I think it all depends on demand. So there are different tools that we can use. There's a lot of different tools on the market for you to look and know. Okay, there are a lot of demand for tenants in this area. Population as well in the particular area also are factors that you can look at. And also buying properties, basically trying to look for the worst house in the best street, to buy. So the neighborhood, the value of the properties in the area. So you just try to identify that property in that area that is not in good condition. And you already know that if you improve that property, you already know the value of well-done up property in that area. So you have a starting point, then that's how you qualify that property from your starting point. So for example, you look at the street and you say, look at a very nicely done up house, 2-bedroom house on that street, and assuming it's valued at 200,000, and then you see another property on that street, which is in a very bad condition, not the same quality as that one of 200,000.
On the same street.
Yeah, on the same street, So then you know already that, oh, okay, if you improve this property, you are going to get a 200,000 valuation
see.
for it. So all you have to do is try and buy that other property at a good price to be able to get that
The
appreciation.
value,
and value.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And in terms of the costs for venturing into property, what costs should people be thinking about in terms of starting with their first flat, for example? So I know there's, of course, the cost of acquiring the property in itself, but there are perhaps other hidden costs that you may not even think about. What costs are involved? From the
Yeah, so
experience?
there's a lot of cost, because property is capital intensive, So the first cost that you should think about is having the deposit, to put on the property, as part of your buy-to-let mortgage,
Okay.
So because typically most companies, the banks, the high street bank don't want to lend on those rundown properties because they don't see them as good assets to add to their portfolio. So you have to make them look nice, to the high quality before you go to the high street banks, So typically most lenders, they want you to have 25%
Of the value of the house.
of the value from your own pocket, and then they can put a mortgage. You can get a mortgage based on 75% of the value. So that's the first cost, And then once you manage to do that, so you buy the property, then you start looking at the refurbishment cost, for renovating the property, So again, property is a people's business, So that is where some of those skills that I have, from years back, dealing with people, dealing with failures, sometimes you even put an offer on a property, and you don't get accepted, it goes into closing date, so there's a lot of things, or you're looking for investors to fund your project, you can't get investors, so this you get all those failures, So going back to the cost, so costs are like the deposit,
It's
the
25%.
cost, the
Okay.
cost of renovation, cost to pay solicitors, and that's really.
Those are the main costs.
Those are the main costs.
Right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And start with one flat. And over the years, we've gone to 25. Could you please talk to me about that journey of scaling and growing from 1 to 25? How did that happen over time?
Yeah, so it's basically just having that belief, we always say that in property, because capital intensive, you always need other people's money, to fund your projects, So having that understanding, first of all, to present yourself that you are experienced, you know what you're doing, in the business. That gives someone else confidence to fund your project, to fund the project, So people fund a project, and I pay them returns, for their fund. Instead of having the money in the bank, I pay their return. So that is how you grow. That's how you grow.
Okay.
From one to the other. It is challenging.
How so? Like, what are some of the challenges that you
Yeah.
encountered?
So it's challenging because sometimes it's not every sort of qualification. When I mean qualification is you having the complete business plan for the property, okay, what will it be valued at? How much you will use to do the refurbishment, So cost go over, So you can decide, you can say, okay, from at the beginning when you're buying the property, you think you spend 20K with the refurbishment, And then you end up spending 50K,
That's happened.
Yeah,
Sounds like it's happened for you a couple of times.
yes, it happens, So you get all these challenges, dealing with builders, dealing with solicitors, You know, yeah. So there are always different challenges in the business as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, maybe let's take a case study or a scenario, and we can sort of drill into the technicalities there, because what I'm trying to do is paint a picture in the mind of a listener who is thinking, I've been wanting to start this thing for quite a while,
Yeah.
but I just don't know how to go about that.
Yeah.
So imagine we are in, let's say, Edinburgh, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you go to Edinburgh, you found a street, you've done all your research, there's a demand, the population is great population,
Yeah.
and it's a nice street, you found a two-bedroom house there that's worth, say, 200,000.
Yeah.
But then on that same street, you found a house that's same two-bedroom, but it's
Yeah.
been run down, and
Yeah,
it's worth
yeah.
50,000.
Yeah.
What do you do next?
So first of all, you know, it won't be worth 50,000.
So we want
And so first of all, you just need to look at, okay, what's the end value? So you know the end value is 200,000, you know, and then you try to work your way down, you know. So you know, there are trainings for these principles, you know. So disclaimer for your viewers, you know, I'm not a financial advisor, you know, but the way we look at it is that you look at it, okay, 75% of that 200,000, you know, so you look at 75% of that 200,000 as a starting point, you know. So that is the end value, okay? You look at 75% of that, and then you remove how much is it going to cost you to renovate the house, you know. You estimate it, you know, based on estimate. You might take a builder to go there. You might go and look at it yourself.
Oh, is it possible to do that before you even put an offer?
Yes, you can do
see.
that. You know, so that's where building relationship comes in. You know, you try and build the relationship. Have your power team in place. You know, power team, your solicitors, your builder, your mortgage broker, your architect. You know, those are the key power teams. You know, in the business. You know. So then you can speak to them and say, okay, how much is it going to cost us to develop this property? You know, so say 20K, you know, and then you take that off that value, and then you know your starting point. You say, okay, 75% of 200,000, 20K of that, and then you say, okay, maybe 100, it comes to about 140. Then you should be trying to buy that property at that price.
Oh.
You know, because you don't want to buy it at the top price, because you are adding value to it. You know, so even if the property is 180,000 on the market, you try and negotiate it. You know, but sometimes you will not. Because everybody that is wanting to sell this property wants to sell it at a higher value. You know. Then, so that is where your negotiation skills come in. You know, you can decide. Sometimes you can decide to meet the owner of the property and, you know, let them know, be open to them what needs to be done. You know, let them know that, you know, oh, this property, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, and these are the costs.
I see.
To get to this. So your value, your current asking price may be unrealistic, you know. Some will not accept that, you know. And if they don't, and if you put your offer based on what you feel you can buy it for, and you don't get it, you move on, you know, to the next one, you know, until you try to get the one that you know will make a good return for you.
I see.
Make a good return for you. And it's not every property that you buy that is nice and juicy, you know. So some you can make a decision of, okay, how many years is it going to take me to get my money back on this project? You know, you can look at it in terms of that. It's just like every other business, you know. On a business case, every business, they're looking at the return on investment, the return on money you put in the property, you know. So typically, if you work your numbers and you're getting about, say, 25% return, you know, then, you know, basically paying back the money that you invested it in 3-4 years, then it becomes a good business, a good option for you. you know. So that is, there are a lot of, you know, I've just brushed the
The
surface,
surface,
you
yeah.
know, but there are a lot of things that you need to consider,
Right.
you know, before but all of this comes in by, first of all, you getting the knowledge to actually qualify all these properties, to qualify all these
Right.
deals, you know. And that was the basis where I started, you know, getting that knowledge, first of all.
Yeah.
You know, so.
For someone who is thinking, I can get this knowledge online, why do I need to go to a seminar and all of this? I have to pay money. What would your thoughts be to that kind of person?
Yeah, you know, you can always get as much from online, you know, you not really get, you know, there are a lot of property trainings companies out there, you know, they will only give you a filler, you know, just to try and get you to buy the package, you know, but to really understand it, you need to really have good in-depth training about it, you know. It's not everything. Yes, there are a lot of information online, you know, but the true knowledge
Yeah.
is within those training packages. You know.
Right.
So you need to try and there are a lot of packages I can always recommend
Yes,
to
please.
viewers, you know. So if you want, you can put a
Yeah.
link and all of that, you know. So there are some good training companies out there, you know,
Okay.
that could do good training. I've been around. I've done a lot of trainings, you know, so I know the good ones.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so for people listening, we're putting them down in the show notes. You could check the show notes. Do you do trainings yourself? Does clarinets do trainings?
No, so it's
Okay.
it's not an area that
Yeah.
I do. I go and do presentation, you know, and the last couple of years I've done a lot of talks to business um, uh, fellowships,
Yeah.
you know, in Aberdeen, in Edinburgh, you know. But if people always do training, I always refer them to my good friend Nee.
Nee,
He
yeah,
does
yeah.
good training. But that's because for me, my own strategy is different. I'm not pushing my strategy in that training side. You
Why is
know?
that?
I think it's because I know that I can always piggyback on somebody else that is doing it.
All
You
right.
know? I know I have a good friend who is doing it,
Yeah.
who is, you know, so I can always refer people.
To him, yeah.
And sometimes, you know, he even called me to come and do some presentation with him as well, you know.
Okay.
But it's not an area that I'm sort of focusing on.
Right.
You know, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then I think some last two questions I have as we start to wrap this episode around real estate and properties is you mentioned a power team. How do you find your power team? Is that online, friends?
Yeah. I think if the first thing is through referrals. You know, that's the first thing. You know, so once you the property business, you know, can, as I said, can be challenging. So you need a good network of people that are part of the business. You know, so you can always get good referrals from people.
I see.
You know, that are already doing it. Some of the training companies, you become part of their community, and that's very key, you know, because
see.
especially for foreigners like us, you know, who you don't have any family here, you don't know anybody, you know, so where do you start? And that was the same thing with me as well.
Yeah.
When I started, I didn't have anybody. I don't even know anyone who can lend me money at the time, you know,
Yeah.
so. You know, at that time when I was even doing the training, I was like, you know, so who is going to fund my project? You know, I don't know anybody here. I don't have any family. I don't have a rich. I'm not from a rich family and things like that. You know, who is going to fund my project?
Yeah.
You know, again, mindset comes into this as well. You know, so that's why I'm always going back into mindset. You know, then you need to ask yourself and believe in yourself that. If you put yourself out there and make a good proposal to somebody and you create a win-win for that person, the person will invest in your project.
Wow.
You know? And then that's it.
So
you know?
money is not really the issue.
Yeah,
It
no,
is
it's not,
mindset to start
it's
with.
your mindset to start with, you know? So again, I had to look at myself, okay, yes, I've already got that basis, so I need to go back to it, you know? So I had that mindset, you know, that I can go out there present deals to people, friends. I started with friends. My first angel investor was actually my friend.
Wow.
And that's it. And then you just keep growing from there. And now I have people investing in my projects that I don't know.
Do you accept just
Yeah.
external investors as well? So someone looking to, on your website or something, looking to invest.
Yeah.
Do you have that as
Yeah,
well?
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So just in case listeners were thinking of investing as well, I'll put, if you could send me the link.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll also put the link as well, where you could invest and also learn and grow your own portfolio as well.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting. But honestly, this has been a very fascinating journey. One of the last areas I want us to touch on, maybe two areas quickly. One is reflection. At your journey, I think there are several areas we didn't get to go in depth into. So this would be our idea of like going over them on a very, very high level.
Okay.
So the first question I have here is, as you look back on your life's journey and your life story, what are you most grateful for?
Yeah, what am I most grateful for? I'm always grateful for a lot of things, people that gave me opportunities, you know, I can't really, because I've had a lot of breakthroughs in so many difficult situations. It's very difficult to pick one. But I'm very grateful for my parents, because I feel that my dad gave me that. Yes, even though he didn't have a lot to offer me when I was a child, but he gave me that value. He gave me that value, that entrepreneurial value, that value to go there, fail, and succeed, and not to limit myself,
Right.
He gave that to me, first of all, the value to go and create something yourself and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Take action yourself, My dad always tell me something when I was a child, I have done it and I've seen him do it. They are two different things.
Explain.
I have done it.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody build something, or have an experience in something, you see someone do it, it's different from
Yeah,
you
for
did
sure.
it yourself.
For sure.
Because the experience of you taking that action to do it yourself is different from you looking at someone doing it. So that always resonated with me in terms of taking action. So I'm very grateful for that, I'm very grateful for that. And over the years, grateful for even for Dayo Lawoye, who sort of channel my mind and business as well, and a lot of people that gave me opportunity, even the guys that gave me the opportunity to come into the UK, and even for my wife as well, So I don't really have that single
Specific thing that like, oh my
thing,
goodness, this is the
because
most
I have
thing. So many of them.
so many
Fair,
breakthroughs,
fair.
and I continue to have that even till today.
Right. Okay. Okay. So next question. So imagine 18-year-old Andrew is sitting right now to me. If you had the opportunity to give him a piece of advice, tell him something as you look back on your journey and lessons you've learned, what would you tell him?
I think the first thing I would tell him is, first of all, not to limit myself, remove any limitation and understand that, the boundaries in life are only in your own mind, So don't put any boundaries in your life. Just be open and succeed with an open mind.
Right.
And that's real. That's
limitations
it. Yeah,
in yourself.
no limitations.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And I tend to flip this question as well. So imagine instead of 18-year-old Andrew, 80-year-old Andrew is listening to this conversation several years from now.
Yeah.
What is something you would want him to hear then?
Yes. What I in a way I will I want to be sure that my journey has impacted on others. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. And one question you're guaranteed to hear in almost every episode of the podcast is this one I'm about to ask you. And it is, given your life story, your experiences and journey, if your life was a book, what would its title be?
Uh, yeah. Yeah, because my life has always been all about, mindset and positivity, because that's actually what has taken me through every challenge, every step, every journey, having that mindset and not limiting myself. I would say, what would the title be? Entrepreneurial mindset. Entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe.
I like that. I like that. Entrepreneurial mindset.
Entrepreneurial mindset.
I like that,
Yeah,
Andrew.
the
Well, if you eventually
entrepreneurial
write a book called Entrepreneurial Mindset, people know where they heard it from. It's from this show. It's from this show. Well, I like the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that you brushed on quickly. Was you mentioned you met your mom when you were 18.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that go? And are you close? Are you still close to your parents now?
Yeah, so because at the time, because like I said, when I was 3, my dad had me when he was very young, and so he wasn't stable then. He was just a young chap, had gave birth to me really out of marriage. So I lived with my grandmother first of all, and then I moved from family to family, So I don't know the reason, but because I've moved a lot, my mom was somewhere else. I didn't meet her until I was 18, But I can always remember the very first day I met her, and even though she has not seen me since I was like 3 years old, when she saw me, she met me, there was no social media or anything
Yeah.
like that. She knew that I was a son,
Wow.
So, so it was a key moment, But now I'm close to my mom, but I'm much more closer to my dad because I grew up with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Okay. Well, honestly, Andrew, thank you so much. It's been such a blast, like having this conversation with you. Thanks for the wisdom. I think for me, a couple of key things I got from just listening to you is this idea of having a positive mindset, irrespective of life's challenges. You've had quite a number of challenges thrown at you, and to see you smiling and having gone through them and still, continuing to work hard and do the right things is very inspiring.
Thank you so much for watching this video till the very end. You made it. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more honest, powerful conversations like this about identity, resilience, and purpose, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if something in today's story resonated with you, please do leave us a comment or share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep bringing these voices to life. Until next time, please keep reflecting, keep growing, and keep writing your story. Take care of yourself. Bye.